On August 3, 2D25, Iran launched a sudden and calculated strike. 5 Shahed 238 suicide drones and a RAD-500 supersonic missile that ripped into a U.S. Navy warship, detonating 14,000 gallons of fuel in a fireball visible for miles. 2 American sailors died on the spot, 5 others were seriously injured, and the ship was engulfed in smoke and fire. But within minutes, grief turned to action. The U.S. Aircraft Carrier Strike Group responded fiercely. 5 A-10 Thunderbolt IIs, each armed with a GAU-8A Avenger 6-barrel Gatling gun, opened fire, firing 3,900 rounds per minute straight at the Iranian warship until only charred debris remained. And that was only the beginning of the retaliation campaign. Bombers, cruise missiles, the most powerful weapons of the U.S. Navy advanced deep into Iranian territory. What happened to the Iranian bases when they suffered the wrath of the U.S. military? Did this attack force encounter any fierce resistance from Iran? Let me find out the truth. At exactly 8:45 a.m. on August 3, 2025, calm seas off the Strait of Hormuz turned into a war zone. An American Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer temporarily detached from the USS Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group due to a critical rear engine failure floated in isolation awaiting technical support. Aboard were 287 U.S. sailors, most unaware they were minutes from disaster. Iranian surveillance misjudged the scene. From a distance of 31 miles, commanders concluded this was a lone, lightly armed vessel, perfect prey. Their decision would become one of the costliest mistakes in Iran's naval history. The strike came without warning. 5 Shahed 238 suicide drones, each with a 66-pound warhead, swarmed in from multiple vectors. Seconds later, a RAD-500 guided missile traveling at 3,500 km slammed into the ship's aft propulsion section, igniting 14,000 gal of fuel. The blast registered a magnitude 2.1 on coastal seismographs, sending steel and debris over 300 feet into the air. 2 American sailors died instantly, one just 19 years old. 5 others were badly wounded, including a chief petty officer suffering 78% burns. Smoke blackened the sky, but the stars and stripes still waved defiantly above the wreckage. Iranian commanders celebrated, unaware the destroyer belonged to America's most advanced carrier strike group just 90 nautical miles away. And every ship in that group had just heard the distress call. Tell me if you're still there. Don't leave yet, because in less than 2 minutes, the Gulf will feel the full force of America's wrath. At 8:47 a.m., 2 minutes after the blast, the USS Gerald R. Ford's Combat Information Center received the encrypted distress signal. Ship disabled. Casualties confirmed. Missile strike. Origin: Iranian corvette. Silence. Then a voice like a steel blade. Rear Admiral Douglas Keller. We respond immediately. Within 90 seconds, 2 F-35C Lightning IIs roared off the deck at 120 meters/hour, bound for the crippled ship's coordinates. Their mission: identify the enemy, assess the damage, and stream targeting data back to the fleet. From a nearby forward base, 5 A-10 Thunderbolt IIs lifted into the sky, each armed with a GAU-8A Avenger 30mm Gatling gun and GBU-38 precision bombs. The GAU-8A fires 3,900 rounds per minute, enough to shred a warship in 15 seconds. Trailing them, 5 UH-60 Blackhawks carried 50 Navy SEALs and medics to extract survivors and secure the scene. At 0912 a.m., the F-35s locked eyes on their target. Without radio chatter, the A-10s dove. Thousands of armor-piercing rounds ripped into the Iranian ship, followed by 2 2,000-pound GBU bombs that punched through the midsection. The detonation threw steel fragments half a mile. The vessel didn't sink. It disintegrated, vanishing into fire and smoke. But this was only the opening act. The real blow was yet to come. Please support us by liking and subscribing to the channel. Now comes the real blow for Iran. The Iranian corvette's fiery destruction had barely faded from the horizon when the USS Gerald R. Ford's War Council assembled at 0920 a.m. Rear Admiral Douglas Keller's voice was calm, but laced with steel. They crossed the line. We take out their launch site completely. Within minutes, satellite surveillance locked onto the origin point of the earlier missile strike, a heavily fortified Iranian base 172 miles inland just west of Bandar Lena. This wasn't an ordinary outpost. Intelligence confirmed it was a Tier 1 UAV and missile hub housing ROD-2 surface-to-air systems, Burken 9 missile batteries, and at least 200 IRGC personnel. The base also controlled multiple launch pads for Shahed series drones, all hidden beneath reinforced concrete shelters. At 10 a.m., Operation Judgment Spear was cleared for execution. The strike formation was a show of precision warfare. 10 F-15E Strike Eagles, each loaded with 2 GBU-53B StormBreaker smart bombs, capable of hitting a moving vehicle from 45 miles away with less than 3 feet of error. 6 MQ-9B Reaper drones tasked with live targeting and laser designation. 5 Switchblade 600 kamikaze drones programmed to destroy radar arrays and SAM launchers before the main wave. 3 A-18G Growlers designed to blind Iranian radar and jam communications for the first 90 seconds of the assault. The attack began at 10:41 a.m. The Switchblades struck first, diving at over 100 miles per hour, each carrying a 33-pound high-explosive warhead. Within 45 seconds, 3 Rod-2 launchers and 2 long-range radar dishes were reduced to flaming wreckage. Iranian operators scrambled in confusion, firing blindly into empty air. Next, the MQ-9B Reapers moved in, their sensors painting invisible laser beams onto hangars, fuel depots, and command bunkers. High above, the F-15E descended from 35,000 feet, releasing 20 StormBreaker bombs in staggered formation. These glide bombs sliced through the air, curving in flight to strike precisely where the lasers pointed. The effect was devastating. A fuel depot holding 120,000 gallons of aviation fuel erupted into a fireball 400 feet high. The command bunker collapsed inward after a direct hit, killing the senior IRGC officer on site. A drone storage hangar was obliterated, destroying at least 12 Shahed UAVs before they could be launched. In 90 seconds, the base's operational capacity was erased. The radar screens in Tran went dark. No outgoing signals, no defensive counterfire. By 10:49 a.m., every U.S. aircraft had returned to safe airspace. Final assessment: 28 Iranian combatants killed, all military personnel, $300 million in missile and UAV assets destroyed, 0 civilian casualties. The satellite feed showed nothing but scorched earth and twisted steel. But in Thurn's command centers, the silence was short-lived. Plans for a desperate counterattack were already taking shape, and the U.S. strike group was ready for them. Before we get to the Iran counterattack, tell me where in the world are you watching the video from? Tehran moved from shock to vengeance in ours. By 12:15 p.m., U.S. satellites and the E-2D Hawkeye on patrol saw the pattern. 3 Su-24 Fencer fighter bombers lifting from southern Iran, each lugging a Kh-29 air-to-air surface missile built to crack ships wide open. At the same moment, sonar techs aboard the USS Thomas Hudner picked up the faint rhythmic thrum of a Fata-class attack submarine sliding in at 11 knots, trying to knife beneath the carrier group's shield. Admiral Keller didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to engage all threats before they're in range. The Aegis combat system took over. An orchestra of sensors and fire control. The SPY-1D radar aboard the USS Normandy painted the Su-24s at 280 nautical miles, long before Iranian radar could see the fleet. Through cooperative engagement capability, the picture flowed to every ship and fighter in the group, fusing into a single perfect track. 2 SM-6 missiles ripped from their vertical launch cells, accelerating past 2,500 MPO. 19 seconds later, the lead Su-24 vanished from the plot. 4 seconds after that, the second jet disintegrated in a cone of debris over the Gulf. The third pilot broke hard to escape, diving for the deck. He never made it. A FA-18E Super Hornet already on combat air patrol took a clean shot at 40 meters and AM-120D riding radar energy straight to center mass. One radar blip, then none. Below, the ocean held its breath. The Fate crept toward torpedo range, nose up, sonar pinging in passive intervals. The Navy didn't wait. AP-8A Poseidon stitched the sea with 16 sonobuoys, triangulating the contact in under 90 seconds. An MH-60R Saya Hawk arrived with dipping sonar to lock the solution. The Hudner answered with a RUM-139 VLSRO, kicking a Mk-54 lightweight torpedo into the water far ahead of the sub's path. The Mk-54 ran in at 40 knots, homed, and detonated within 50 yards off the bow, close enough to shear fittings and trip breakers without breaching the hull. For the Iranian captain, everything went dark at once. Lights, propulsion, pump control. With emergency batteries bleeding fast and a second torpedo already queued, the Fate blew ballast and backed out, wounded and humiliated, trailing bubbles toward shallow water. Time from first detection to last splash, 16 minutes. U.S. casualties 0. Enemy aircraft downed. 3. Submarine mission abort. On the Ford's flight deck, sailors paused just long enough to breathe. The lesson was simple and terrible for any adversary. A U.S. carrier strike group is not a single ship. It is a worked fortress. Aegis doesn't blink. SM-6 cleans the sky. Poseidon Sea Hawk and Maki-54 make the deep a hostile place to hide. And the men and women running it all have learned from decades of hard seas to do the job without shouting. The radios went quiet. The sea settled. But the mission wasn't finished. Intelligence still showed a second Iranian node feeding targeting data to the coast. A harder sight, deeper defenses, closer to civilian infrastructure. The next move would have to be surgical and unmistakable. One more strike and the Gulf would fall silent. The Iranian counterattack had failed. 3 jets lay at the bottom of the Gulf. A submarine limped home half crippled and the U.S. fleet sat untouched. But inside the Carrier Strike Group's command center, no one mistook this for the end. Reconnaissance from RQ-4 Global Hawk and P-8A Poseidon patrols revealed something far more dangerous. A second Iranian control hub near Bandar Abbas, hidden among warehouses and civilian docks. It was feeding targeting data to Iran's remaining missile forces. Leaving it standing meant inviting another strike. Rear Admiral Keller issued the order without hesitation. We shut them down permanently. This was to be a precision blow, not just to underscore Iran's capability, but to make them think twice for the next decade. The strike package was formidable. 8 Fa-18E Super Hornets from the USS Gerald R. Ford, each loaded with GBU-31 20,000-pound JDAM for hardened structures. 4 MQ-25 Stingray drones for mid-air refueling to keep jets loitering on target. 3 EA-18G Growlers to smother radar with electronic noise. 2 MQ-9B Reapers for real-time laser designation. At 1542, the Growlers went in first, flooding Iranian air defense channels with false targets and ghost echoes. The Bandar Abbas radar operators were effectively blind. 30 seconds later, the Reapers began painting critical structures. The command, bunker, antenna arrays, and a fortified hangar suspected of housing ballistic missile guidance systems. The Hornets came screaming in at 600 knots, hugging the sea until the last moment, then pulling up to release. 16 JDAMs dropped in staggered sequence, each guided by GPS and laser to within 1 meter of its mark. The impacts were surgical yet devastating. Reinforced concrete peeled away like paper. Steel towers folded. The bunker roof caved in under the combined force of 64,000 pounds of explosive power. A secondary explosion tore through the dockyard as hidden fuel tanks erupted, sending a mushroom of black smoke 800 feet high. By the time Iranian emergency crews reached the site, the entire command complex was nothing but a smoking crater. Time from first jamming signal to last detonation: 4 minutes 27 seconds. Civilian casualties 0. Iranian military losses undisclosed, but operational control in the region gone. As the strike group regrouped in formation, Admiral Keller addressed his officers quietly. Message delivered. We're done here. In Tehran, the silence that followed was telling. No more drones. No more missile launches. The Gulf returned to calm. Not by chance, but because every potential threat had been erased. For the men and women of the Gerald R. Ford strike group, it wasn't just a victory. It was a statement. The U.S. Navy doesn't start fights, but it always finishes them.